Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first episode of the helping you guys out videos. I don't really have a name for it yet. Need to come up with one. If you guys have an idea for a name of this series, let me know. So I made a video yesterday talking about how to help you guys learn how to fish certain baits. If you have a problem fishing one bait, or if you have trouble fishing it and you just can't catch any fish on it, let me know what that bait is and I can do a video on it teaching you guys how to fish it. So I think it was the very first comment on the video on the Coast to Coast Outdoors YouTube channel, and it was the wopper plopper, and that comment came in from Sportsman 101. So go check out his channel. He has an awesome channel, makes some great hunting and fishing videos, so go check out that channel. But today we're going to be talking about how I fish the wopper plopper. So I asked him what size he fishes, because there is, I think, 5 sizes. There's the 160, or no, the 190. Is it 160? I can't remember. There's a 90, a 110, a 130. That's what it is. It's the 90. I'm throwing the 90 here because that's what he said that he throws, is the 90. They have a 75, which is one that I have. I have a 130. I don't have any of the 110s, and I don't have any of the 190s, just because the 110s are actually more expensive than the 130s, which I thought was really stupid. That's why I don't have any of those. I'd rather buy a 130 over a 110 just because they're cheaper, and they're also bigger. I mean, they're bigger for bigger fish. Now, obviously, with the weather, me wearing a jacket and all that, this is not topwater fishing conditions, but I thought, why not go ahead and do this video. Even though it's topwater, even though I'm probably not going to catch anything, I figured, why not? So how I like to fish a wopper plopper. Now, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. The 90 size wopper plopper is probably my least favorite. And the reason why is you have to reel it at a certain speed to get it to make the right noise. You have to fish it a certain way. It's a very, as the wind decides to start blowing, that's nice. Anyway, it's a very specific bait. You have to fish it a specific way, or you're not going to get it to buzz right, I guess you could say. But something that I've done, and I've caught I think I've only caught 2 fish on this size, on the 90 size. Now, I've only caught 2 fish on the 130 size as well, but one of those 2 fish was a 5.2, which is my personal best. So how I fish this bait, there's a very few big keys that I will fish with all the time with this bait, and that is reel it all the way up to the rod tip. Reel it all the way up, just like that right there. And sometimes, even some of you guys that are musky fishermen, you all know how to do this, but you can do like a little figure 8 type deal. Believe it or not, that does actually work, and it does catch fish. It does catch pretty big bass doing that. I've done it before with crankbaits and stuff, and it's caught fish. So don't be afraid to do that. The biggest thing with reeling it all the way up to your rod tip like this is there could be a fish following it from 10-15 yards away and hasn't really made it to the bait yet. So with you slowly reeling it up to the rod tip, it can actually help you a lot in catching a lot more fish. That's how I caught my 5.2. I'll put a picture up here in a second of that fish. It was a 5-pound, 2-ounce fish, which for around here is a pretty good fish. And I caught it on the 130 size wopper plopper in the bone color. Now, if I had 2 colors that I would throw all the time, it would be bone and loon. But this one here is in the Terminator color. I think it's called Terminator 23 or something like that. I can't remember. It's kind of like a scaled shad pattern, which is a pretty neat pattern. It's not one of my favorites. Like I said, I've only ever caught 2 fish on it, but they work. So a big key when you're fishing this bait is obviously warm water. This is a topwater bait. The warm water is going to catch more fish with a topwater bait. The biggest things that I do to help myself, as that kicks on, biggest thing to help myself get more bites and stuff is fish at the opportune times. Do not go out at the middle of the day at noon when it's close to 100 degrees outside and the water temperature is up towards the mid-90s to go out and throw topwater, it's not going to work out. More than likely, it's not going to work out. Now, there has been days for myself that it does work. I have had days where, fishing in the middle of the day with topwater baits does catch fish. Had a leaf on my bait, but it came off. Like I said, don't go out in the middle of the day and think you're going to catch them on topwater. You're most likely not. The best way to do it is to go out super early in the morning. Sometimes I'll even go before it's even daylight outside. There's been days, this was last year, the summer of last year, I came out here because I got up real early. I came out here and was throwing a buzz frog, the Doc's Lure Company bullfrog. And I tossed it up towards this brush pile right here, which is kind of in the sunlight. That's why I'm kind of covering the sun. Right here, the brush pile, and was buzzing it across there, and all of a sudden it just got destroyed by about a 2.5 pound bass, and it wasn't even daylight yet. I didn't even get to see the explosion. Now, one thing that I do want to say about this is, with this bait, I've noticed a lot that you can't really reel it with the rod tip down because it kind of wants to, it almost wants to sink a little bit. You guys can kind of see it. It's wanting to sink right there. It's actually under the surface right now. The tail is just above the surface. The best thing to do with this bait to keep it from making bad action, I guess you could say. I got it snagged. Is it going to come out? Yeah, it did. But anyway, the best way to keep it from sinking down is to keep your rod tip up a little bit higher than you normally would. If you know how to throw the 130 and the 190, I'm sure is the same way as the 130. I don't really know. I've never thrown the 190. But if you've thrown the 130, you will probably know. People honking and everything else. You'll probably know that it doesn't really matter how you fish it. They all have the same action the 130 does, but the 190 is very different. If you reel it with the rod tip down, the action kind of dies almost. But if you reel it with the rod tip up, it keeps the head of that bait up out of the water a little bit more, and it keeps that tail buzzing on the surface the whole time, and it has that same action all the way through. But if you, like I said, if you drop the rod tip, it sinks. The head wants to sink down, and then your action is pretty much dead. A big key also with this, I was mentioning this a second ago, but I've kind of lost my train of thought a little bit. But early in the mornings, very, very early in the morning, sometimes not even in the daylight, I'll throw a wopper plopper. But also at early or late in the evening, closer to nighttime, is a great time to throw a wopper plopper as well. One day I had one of the bigger explosions I've ever had on a wopper plopper. It was it was this bait right here actually, and I was throwing it, and it was getting super duper late, almost to where I couldn't even see the other side of the pond. It was getting that late, and it was actually this pond, so you guys can kind of see it's not exactly that big. It's only about 20 yards wide, and it was getting to the point where I couldn't even see the other side, and I was throwing this bait and had a huge explosion. And it was right about there where that bait is sitting right now. You guys can kind of probably see the bait sitting there. Right about there was where I had that explosion. And it was really cool because the fish came all the way up out of the water. I got to see the entire fish. It was about a 2-pounder. It wasn't a giant, but it was a good fish. One thing that I do have problems with the 90. I keep wanting to say the 130 because I throw it so often. One problem that I do have with the 90 is the hookup ratio is absolutely terrible. So something that you may want to do to help you out is to get a little bit bigger treble hooks. Now, the problem with getting bigger treble hooks is you will have to hold the rod tip up a little bit higher to keep it out of the water, keep it under, or keep it above the surface. That is something that I've had problems with before using topwater baits. I've tried to replace the treble hooks before on topwater baits, and for some reason they want to sink. It's kind of stupid because the treble hooks that I put on were not very big compared to the ones I put on, or they were already on there. But something you may want to do, I've seen people do this before, is I'll show you guys here. There's these stinger hooks you can buy, and they're made for swim baits and flutter spoons. And you can actually, it's like a little wire leader about yay long with a big circle hook, kind of like a circle hook. And one thing you can do, I've seen people do this before, is you can actually put that on this eyelet, or you could put it on the hook eye, and it kind of dangles down here a little bit, so you get any short strikers. I've thought about doing something similar to that, making my own, because the ones they sell on eBay and Tackle Warehouse and stuff like that are like $6 and $7 just for two. They're kind of expensive, so I thought about doing that with like some 20-pound mono or 30-pound mono maybe, taking a big straight shank hook or something like that, and putting it on there as like a trailer hook. You can maximize your hookup ratio doing that. You can also do it with treble hooks, I'm sure. It wouldn't be too hard to do. But like I've said before, the 90 size is not my favorite. The 130 size is definitely my favorite, probably because the first fish on the very first cast that I ever made with the 130, I caught my personal best. And this here kind of goes back to what I was saying a little bit ago, is I was using a spinning rod with 50-pound braid, straight tied to the bait, no leader or nothing, like an idiot, because that's how smart I was at the time. Which I don't use leaders very much anyway, but I was using this bait on braid because it was a brand new bait. It was a big bait, and I was really hoping for a big fish, and I thought braid would probably be a little bit better. But I basically just bombed it out as far as I possibly could with that rod. Hit the surface, and I started reeling it. I just started reeling it at a normal, steady speed, just like this. But what I did was I reeled it all the way to the rod tip, just like this, and about right there, about maybe a foot to 6 inches, somewhere in that middle ground between the two, that 5-pound, 2-ounce bass came up and absolutely destroyed it. And I was not expecting it at all. I didn't even hear it, to believe it or not. I mean, it was real close to me, but I didn't hear it. I just felt it, because I was standing like this right here, right up next to the water, and the bait had reeled up basically like this. I mean, it was like right there, and the fish came up and blew up on the bait, and all I felt was water go up on my shins because I was wearing shorts. All I felt was water hit my legs, and then the fish pulled back against me, and basically all I had time to do was set the hook and flip it right up onto the bank, and it was a hilarious catch. Definitely an unexpected one, probably one of the most unexpected catches I've ever had. But it was really cool. So I do say, you know, if you're wanting to get into whopper plopper fishing, unless you don't use bait casters, you know, you can use a 90. You can also use a 110. You can use a 130 on spinning rod. I mean, that's what I caught that fish on. But I will say that it works a little bit better with bait casters, the 130 does. But if you have bait casters and you know how to use them, and you just don't throw the whopper plopper and you want to get into it, I definitely say go to the 130 size, because the 90 size is just not, it's just not a very good bait in my opinion. I mean, it's good and it catches fish for some people, you know, just like the guy that talked to me about it. You know, the guy that suggested it, Sportsman 101, he said that he has not caught a fish on it yet. I've caught a few fish. I'm not going to say that I'm a whopper plopper expert, because that's definitely not the truth. But I will say that I've caught a few fish on it and had a lot of blow-ups. And that's one of the biggest problems with this bait, is most of the hits that I have don't hook up. I've only caught 2 fish on it, just like I said. I've only, you know, probably had 15-20 blow-ups and only caught 2. But that goes right back to what I was saying earlier about trailer hooks. You know, if you have the means to do it, if you know how to do it, and you can fix one up, you could probably put like a 3 or 4 inch long piece of line coming off of the tail eyelet with like a single hook, you know, like a straight shank hook or something like that. That would help. It would probably help out a lot with blow-ups and hooking the fish. I know a lot of people have problems with the 90 size hookup ratio. I do. My dad has before. You know, my dad was actually the first person to get a blow-up on this bait. He was in my tackle box, and he was like, well, because we was out fishing at a pond that you guys have seen before in videos, and he was like, well, I haven't caught anything yet, so I'll just check this bait out, because I hadn't used it yet, because I was catching fish on a shaky head. And he was like, well, I'll try this. So he picks this bait up, ties it on, and he gets, I think he caught 2 blow-ups, and neither one of them actually got hooked up. And he was like, okay, well, the hookup ratio sucks on this one, so he ended up putting it back in my tackle box. Here comes that wind again. Wasn't supposed to be windy today. The daggum weatherman lied to me, evidently. But I hope you guys learned a little bit of something in this video. Another great tip, actually, that I just remembered that I hadn't said yet is popping it. Now, a lot of people probably don't use this bait, this method, or this way, but it actually does work. I've had a couple blow-ups doing this. What I'd like to do is, like, let's say, I'm going to get over here where the brush pile is kind of clear for you guys to see. It's not getting hit by the sun. But you guys can see, obviously, here there's a brush pile. I'm kind of standing far away from the bank, but whatever. You guys can see there's the brush pile right there. One thing that I do, and I do catch, I haven't caught anything, but I've had blow-ups doing this. I do it with all different baits. Swim jigs, crankbaits, all of them. Is I will cast it out past the brush pile, and I'll reel it up all the way up to the brush pile, and then when I get just a few feet away from it, I'll start popping it. And obviously this is a topwater bait, so you don't have to worry too badly about getting hooked into the brush and everything else unless it's really shallow. But you know, you can pop this bait, believe it or not. I've done it before. It has a really cool action because it's a lot different, very different compared to the normal poppers that these fish will see in their, you know, day-to-day lives. You know, when you see a person out there throwing a popper, poppers are typically a single bait with a popper mouth on the front of it. You know, it's got like a concave mouth right here. But this one here is like a tail popper. It's a reverse popper is the best way that I could kind of describe it is. And this is one of my favorite ways to catch them, or get blow-ups at least, in shallower water. And something else you can do with this bait that gives it a lot more of a finesse topwater action, I guess you could say, is you can actually keep your rod tip low and pop it very subtly. Just like very little bit of popping action, and it actually walks a little bit as well. The 130 walks a lot, believe it or not, and it kind of just little action like that, and it just has a very slight action. The tail kicks a couple times, if any. You know, sometimes the tail doesn't even move, and that can actually help a lot as well. But this is a great bait. Oh, cast all the way up on that other side of the pond. That was almost pretty bad. But anyway, like I was saying, this is a decent bait. You know, the 130 is definitely better. I will always say that, unless I catch like a 6-pounder on this, which I doubt will happen because I don't throw it enough. And this is actually a good bait for people who fish for peacock bass as well. I don't think there's a whole lot of people that watch my channel that catch peacock bass down in like Brazil and stuff, but you can actually use it like a water chopper, and it does work. Never had any blow-ups doing this, but holy cow. One thing I will say about this bait, even though it's not my favorite, and even though it doesn't have as good of action as the 130, it does cast a mile for its size. It's a small bait, but it does cast very far. I almost hit the other bank standing here, which is about a 50-yard cast. So, you know, as small as this bait is, most of the time when I cast that far, or cast that hard, it doesn't even get halfway across, but that time it did. So, but yeah, this is the 190, or this is the 90 size. I keep wanting to say 190. What is wrong with me? Anyway, this is the 90 river to sea whopper plopper. Like I said a second ago, if you're wanting to get into whopper plopper fishing, definitely get the 130, because the 130 is better. I think it is. You know, I'm sure there's people who will disagree with me. I'm sure there's people that will probably think that I'm crazy for not liking the 90 size. But you know, whatever. It's my opinion. But specifically asked for a wopper plopper video. So I was like, you know what? I'll go ahead and do a wopper plopper video, even though it's freezing cold and some of the water there's a 55-gallon drum sitting up there, and the water that's in it is frozen, so you guys can kind of see how cold it is. Supposedly this next weekend it's supposed to be up in the 60s, but the lows are also going to be close to below freezing, so we don't really know what's going to happen there. My birthday is this weekend. It's on Saturday, so I'm hoping I can do some fishing. Hopefully, I mean, if I don't catch my first bass of the year at any point this upcoming week, then hopefully I can catch it on my birthday. That'd be pretty cool. But thank you guys for watching once again. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Check out the Sportsman 101 YouTube channel. It's a great channel. And yeah, I think that's about it. Bye.